Before the towering marble temples graced the sun-drenched hills, before the profound pronouncements of philosophers resonated through bustling agoras, and before the thunderous clash of warriors echoed beneath the proud banners of nascent power, there was a profound and encompassing silence. Ancient Greece. The civilization we now recognize in its magnificent grandeur did not burst forth in a single, cataclysmic moment. Nor was its arrival heralded by the fierce beat of war drums or the commanding decrees of mighty rulers. Instead, its genesis was a slow, almost imperceptible unfolding. Much like a quiet ripple expanding gently across the serene, azure surface of the Aegean Sea, stirred into being by an unseen wind and the nascent stirrings of a collective dream. The very land itself, a breathtaking mosaic of jagged, intricate coastlines, secluded, verdant valleys, and dense, forested mountains, seemed to whisper with an untold potential. Its early inhabitants lived in intimate communion with the earth, drawing life-giving water from springs they believed were blessed by the gods, and casting their gazes skyward at stars that, in their ancient lore, wove intricate tapestries of stories and destinies. In this primordial dawn, history was not yet etched onto enduring stone tablets or brittle papyrus scrolls. Rather, it was meticulously preserved within the collective consciousness of men and women, meticulously passed down through generations around flickering firelight. These were not yet grand narratives of sprawling empires or monumental conquests. Instead, they were the foundational tales of heroes. Names imbued with mythical power, Perseus, Theseus, and Heracles, drifted like sacred echoes across the chasm of generations, subtly yet profoundly shaping the moral compass and ethical framework of impressionable young Greek minds. Their legends transcended mere entertainment. They were profound lessons, cautionary warnings etched into the very soul, and boundless sources of inspiration. It was from this intricate, interwoven blend of discernible truth and profound myth that the Hellenes, the Greeks, began the monumental task of defining their collective identity. They were not, at this nascent stage, a unified people. Not yet. Yet they shared an intangible force, an invisible thread that was nonetheless unshakable, an inherent belief in the pursuit of greatness. A profound reverence for personal virtue, urity, and an unwavering dedication to living a life so impactful and memorable that it would forever be etched into the annals of time. No single figure more powerfully embodied this burgeoning spirit than Homer, the enigmatic blind poet whose lyrical voice seemed to emanate directly from the very heart and soul of Greece itself. While very little verifiable information is known about the man himself, his two monumental epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, transcended mere literature to become the foundational bedrock texts of Greek identity. They were far more than just captivating stories. They were profound maps charting the intricate topography of the Greek soul. In the Iliad, Homer masterfully painted a world perpetually teetering on the precipice between the profound weight of honor and the destructive force of wrath, between the intoxicating allure of glory and the bitter ashes of ruin. He recounted the epic saga of Achilles, the unmatched warrior of the Greeks, whose incandescent rage alone could dramatically alter the very tides of war. Achilles was, by no means, a paragon of perfection. Indeed, he was far from it. He was consumed by an all-consuming pride, prone to impulsive, often destructive, actions, and driven by an intensely deep wellspring of raw emotion. Yet, it was precisely in his profound imperfection that he ascended to eternal, legendary status. Standing in poignant contrast to him was Hector, the noble and honorable prince of Troy. A man who fought not for the ephemeral gleam of glory, but for the very survival of his beloved city, for his devoted wife, and for his innocent child. In their tragic and inevitable collision, Homer captured something intrinsically and universally human, the immense, often devastating, cost of striving for greatness and the inherent fragility of human life itself. If the Iliad was an unflinching exploration of the brutal realities of war, then the Odyssey was its profound counterpoint. A sweeping narrative about the arduous and transformative journey of return. Odysseus, the cunning and resourceful king of Ithaca, endured a grueling 10-year odyssey, battling monstrous creatures, resisting alluring temptations, and even braving the formidable wrath of the gods themselves, all in his desperate quest to find his way back home. But his struggle was not merely against the external world, it was a deeply internal conflict, a relentless battle against his own inner demons and limitations. His arduous journey became a timeless allegory for the human condition across all ages, perpetually seeking purpose, striving for redemption, and yearning for the ultimate return to the embrace of the people he cherished. These foundational stories profoundly shaped Greek values. They meticulously instilled the virtues of unwavering courage, subtle cunning, unyielding loyalty, and profound humility. They also powerfully demonstrated to the Greeks that even the most exalted among them were susceptible to monumental falls, and that such a fall carried no intrinsic shame if it was met with unwavering honor. As the silent march of generations continued, the scattered small tribes and nascent villages nestled along the sinuous coastlines and within the rolling inland hills began a slow, organic evolution. They meticulously constructed polis, or city-states, frequently positioning them atop strategic hills, each crowned with an acropolis, a fortified, elevated sanctuary that vigilantly watched over the burgeoning settlements below. Each distinct polis possessed its own unique set of laws, its own dedicated army, and its own distinct way of life, yet they were inextricably united by a shared language, a common religious pantheon, and a deep-seated, collective heritage. At the very core of this burgeoning cultural unity lay the vibrant and multifaceted pantheon of Greek gods. Unlike the distant, often unapproachable deities of other cultures, the Greek gods were strikingly, even endearingly, human in their imperfections and emotional volatility. They were frequently consumed by jealousy, capable of boundless love, prone to fits of furious anger, and fiercely protective of their chosen mortals. In essence, they were divine mirrors reflecting the very humans who worshipped them. Zeus, the formidable king of the gods, held sway from his majestic throne atop Mount Olympus. His wife, Hera, the powerful goddess of marriage, was famously prone to vengeful acts. Athena, said to have sprung fully formed from Zeus's head, embodied both profound wisdom and the strategic arts of warfare. Apollo, with his golden lyre, sang melodious songs of radiant light and profound reason, while his twin sister, Artemis, roamed the wild, untamed forests, her bow ever at the ready. Each polis claimed its own revered patron deity. Athens, with its burgeoning intellectual fervor, claimed Athena as its guardian. Corinth, a bustling center of trade, paid homage to Poseidon, the formidable god of the sea. And Delos, imbued with an aura of profound sanctity, became sacred to Apollo. These divine figures profoundly shaped civic life. Through elaborate festivals, solemn sacrifices, and the construction of magnificent temples, the people offered their heartfelt gratitude and earnestly sought divine guidance. In return, they fervently believed the gods bestowed either favor or wrath. Among the myriad sacred sites scattered across Greece, none held as much mystique and enigmatic power as Delphi. The ancient sanctuary nestled with breathtaking beauty on the slopes of Mount Parnassus. Here, the enigmatic oracle of Apollo, a priestess in a trance-like state, uttered her pronouncements in cryptic riddles and profound prophecies. Leaders, both great and small, traveled from every corner of the Greek world, seeking her words, believing implicitly that she channeled divine truth directly from the gods. Her often cryptic guidance frequently swayed matters of war and peace, and her voice carried the immense weight of destiny itself. The people of early Greece were not unified under the dominion of a central king or the expansive reach of a vast empire. Instead, they were inextricably bound by a rich tapestry of shared traditions, a profound reverence for their pantheon of gods, and an innate, fervent love of competition. Out of this vibrant, shared spirit emerged the legendary Olympic Games, first held in Olympia around 776 BC. Every 4 years, Skilled warriors and agile athletes from across the diverse Greek world converged in a temporary state of peace, setting aside their fierce rivalries to honor Zeus, the king of the gods. The events were a testament to physical prowess: foot races, grueling wrestling matches, javelin throws, and exhilarating chariot races. To emerge victorious was to achieve a form of immortality, to have one's name forever etched in glory. Even in this, the Greeks celebrated Arete, the relentless pursuit of excellence in all its forms. As the city-states steadily developed, so too did their intricate systems of governance. Monarchies, once the dominant form of rule, gradually gave way to the ascendancy of aristocracies. In some cities, powerful tyrants seized control, some proving to be cruel oppressors, while others emerged as insightful reformers. Yet others, most notably Athens, began to boldly experiment with entirely new forms of governance. Revolutionary systems that would forever shape the course of human history. But that profound story, with its intricate twists and turns, is a narrative reserved for another time, another night. For now, in this inaugural chapter, the nascent world of ancient Greece stood poised on the very precipice of a monumental transformation. Its legendary heroes had walked the earth, their deeds shaping the collective imagination. Its mighty gods had whispered profound secrets from the mist-shrouded mountaintops, guiding and influencing human affairs. And its people had begun to dream with fervent intensity, dreams of boundless freedom, of unparalleled greatness, and of forging a lasting legacy that would resonate and echo through countless millennia. And as the brilliant stars above the tranquil Aegean Sea shimmered softly, casting their ethereal glow upon the land, Greece waited. It was stirring, slowly but inexorably waking, not merely as a realm of ancient myths and forgotten legends, but as a formidable force that was destined to profoundly reshape the world. The flowering of Polis, a tapestry of pride and power. When the venerable age of epic heroes gracefully receded into the annals of time, yielding its place to the dawning era of ordinary people, Greece began its profound metamorphosis. Humble villages, once isolated, slowly burgeoned into bustling towns. These towns, in turn, blossomed into vibrant polis, city-states, scattered across the undulating hills and along the winding coasts of the Greek world like precious, scattered jewels. These city-states, fiercely independent and brimming with an almost defiant pride, were often embroiled in simmering disputes and open conflicts. Yet, beneath their rivalries, they were bound by invisible, enduring threads, shared bloodlines, a common pantheon of gods, and a profound collective love for their rich language and the art of vigorous, intellectual debate. Unlike the monolithic empires that were steadily rising in the distant east, Greece did not coalesce under the rigid authority of a single, omnipotent ruler. Instead, it blossomed in a myriad of directions simultaneously, a vibrant explosion of diverse cultures and governance. Each polis was a miniature world unto itself, its unique character sculpted by its particular geography and its distinct historical trajectory. High above the bustling settlements, the Acropolis stood sentinel, a fortified, sacred, and seemingly eternal stronghold, forever watchful. Below, the Agora, the vibrant heart of public life, buzzed with an incessant hum of activity. Merchants, their voices raised in eager competition, haggled over aromatic spices and precious scrolls. Philosophers, their brows furrowed in deep thought, engaged in spirited debates beneath the cool shade of canvas awnings. Farmers arrived, not only with their bountiful figs but also with tales from the countryside, while skilled artists proudly displayed their intricate visions of gods and mortals, meticulously rendered in clay and gleaming bronze. However, the polis was far more than a mere geographical location. It was the very essence of identity. A man was not simply a Greek, he was, first and foremost, Athenian, Spartan, Corinthian, or Theban. His profound sense of pride, his unwavering duty, and his predetermined destiny were inextricably linked to the very soil where he drew his first breath. Citizenship was deemed sacred. to valiantly fight for one's city, to cast one's vote in its crucial decisions, to eloquently speak in its revered assemblies. This was the very embodiment of freedom. Yet, it was also a weighty responsibility, forging an unbreakable bond between the individual and the collective. Athens, strategically positioned on a fertile plain near the sparkling sea, flourished through burgeoning trade and relentless innovation. Its early rulers, known as archons, initially hailed from the aristocratic class. However, mounting pressure from the common people, who yearned for greater equity, demanded profound reform. Into this simmering tension stepped Solon, a sagacious lawgiver who walked a precarious tightrope between the powerful wealthy elite and the struggling poor. He enacted sweeping reforms, canceling crippling debts, forbidding enslavement for poverty, and meticulously laying the foundational groundwork for broader citizen participation in government. Later, Cleisthenes would entirely reshape Athenian politics, systematically breaking the entrenched power of the noble families and granting ordinary citizens a direct, impactful say in how they were governed. This audacious early experiment would, in time, evolve into what we now recognize as democracy, the revolutionary idea that all free men, irrespective of their wealth or social standing, possessed an equal voice in the crucial decisions of the state. Yet, not every city aspired to this burgeoning ideal of freedom. Sparta, nestled deep within the rugged and formidable land of Laconia, meticulously forged a society built upon unyielding discipline, rigid order, and absolute control. Following their conquest of the immensely fertile region of Messenia, the Spartans forcibly transformed the subjugated populace into helots, state-owned serfs who were compelled to toil on the land, their labor enabling Spartan citizens to dedicate their entire lives to the relentless pursuit of warfare. However, this conquest came with a profound and persistent cost. The helots vastly outnumbered their Spartan overlords, and the ever-present fear of rebellion became a quiet, incessant drumbeat that dictated and guided every facet of Spartan policy. To ensure their very survival, Sparta was compelled to evolve into a society unlike any other, a state meticulously engineered for war, not for ambition or fleeting glory, but for the fundamental, unwavering purpose of preservation. From the very moment a Spartan boy was born, he was subjected to rigorous measurement and judgment. If he exhibited strength and vitality, he was nurtured and allowed to live. If, however, he was deemed weak or malformed, he was brutally exposed to the elements, left to perish. This practice was undeniably brutal, yet to the Spartans, it was an absolute necessity for the survival of their unique society. At the tender age of 7, boys were wrenched from their families and immediately enrolled in the agoge, a relentlessly rigorous, state-sponsored system of education and military training. Here, they were systematically taught to endure excruciating pain, gnawing hunger, and biting cold. They were instructed in the art of stealthy theft, but crucially, also taught never to be apprehended. Punishment was meted out not for the act of theft itself, but for the abject failure of being caught. They learned to fight as a formidable phalanx, a living, breathing wall of disciplined warriors, fostering such profound trust in the man standing beside them that it surpassed even their trust in themselves. Friendship, unwavering loyalty, and raw physical strength were prized above all other virtues. Through this arduous process, a new archetype of citizen was forged, one who spoke little, obeyed swiftly and without question, and fought with an almost superhuman lack of fear. The ultimate embodiment of Spartan manhood was found in the hoplite, the heavily armored infantryman, clad in gleaming bronze armor, wielding a round shield, a short sword, and a formidable spear. The hoplite was a living wall of honed muscle and unyielding discipline. In the maelstrom of battle, the Spartans moved as a single, indivisible unit, a living machine forged of iron will and unified purpose. Women in Sparta, while excluded from the realm of politics, enjoyed a remarkable degree of freedom largely unheard of in much of the ancient world. They received an education, owned land, and actively engaged in physical exercise, including running and wrestling. They were charged with raising the next generation of formidable warriors, and they did so with immense pride and formidable strength. It was famously said that only Spartan women give birth to real men. Marriage, for Spartans, was not about romantic love, it was a profoundly practical arrangement. Husbands often resided in military barracks well into their 30s, returning to their wives only in utmost secrecy, under the cloak of night. Love, in the Spartan context, was found in the unwavering camaraderie, in the bonds of brotherhood forged through shared duty and collective sacrifice. The Spartan government was as unique and complex as its people. It was presided over by two kings, drawn from two distinct royal families, who led the army in times of war. Alongside them functioned the Gerousia, a venerable council of elders comprising men over 60, elected for life. The Ephors, 5 powerful magistrates, oversaw the day-to-day governance and possessed the extraordinary power to even overrule the kings. This was a meticulously crafted mixed constitution, part monarchy, part oligarchy, and even part democracy, and it served to maintain Sparta's remarkable stability for centuries. Stability was paramount. Change was viewed with deep suspicion. Wealth was not flaunted but carefully concealed and actively discouraged. Foreign travel was severely restricted, and luxury was vehemently shunned. Sparta lived not to expand or acquire, but to endure, and for a considerable time, endure it did. When the vast Persian Empire cast its long, ominous shadow across the Aegean Sea, threatening the very existence of all of Greece, Sparta stood resolute and unyielding. In the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, it was a Spartan king who bravely stepped forward. Leonidas, whose name meant son of the lion, led a mere 300 of his elite warriors to the narrow, crucial pass of Thermopylae, where towering mountains met the crashing sea. There, alongside a few thousand valiant allies, they heroically held back tens of thousands of Persian soldiers for 3 agonizing days. They fought not with the expectation of victory, but to buy precious time, to inspire their fellow Greeks, and to demonstrate to the entire world that freedom was a cause worth dying for. The Spartans fought to the very last man, their lives extinguished in a blaze of glory. But their ultimate sacrifice transcended mere death. It became an enduring legend. "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by." The inscribed stone at Thermopylae reads, "That here, obedient to their laws, we lie." That profound obedience, that ultimate sacrifice, was the very heart of Sparta. But it was also its inescapable cage. In times of peace, Sparta struggled immensely to adapt. Its rigid, unyielding ways left virtually no room for innovation, for the dynamism of trade, or for the flourishing of art. The city produced no great philosophers, no celebrated playwrights, no renowned sculptors. It erected no magnificent temples, composed no enduring epics. It simply survived, and for a time, that was deemed sufficient. Sparta harbored a deep distrust of outsiders. It meticulously avoided entangling alliances, remaining perpetually cautious as Athens burgeoned in power. Its influence steadily spreading through the Delian League and across the vast expanse of the Aegean. To the Spartans, the Athenian embrace of luxury, boisterous public debate, and fierce individualism was not merely dangerous, but utterly decadent. Athens meticulously constructed empires of abstract thought. Sparta, in stark contrast, forged physical shields. And in the inevitable march of time, these two titans would clash. Their profound differences, once merely tolerable, would become utterly intolerable. Their divergent visions for the future of Greece, once seemingly parallel, would collide with devastating force. But that momentous confrontation would unfold much later. For now, in this chapter, Sparta stood unbent, its spirit unbroken. Its people walked with a quiet, unwavering pride, their gazes fixed resolutely forward, their lives simple, stark, and undeniably hard. They trained rigorously in the biting cold, ate from a single, humble iron pot, and found their rest on beds of woven reeds. They feared no man, no raging storm, no brutal war. And as the sun dipped low over the majestic Taygetus mountains, casting long, ethereal shadows across the valley below, the city of Sparta remained still, calmly vigilant, eternally poised. Not all civilizations ascend through the glitter of gold and the soaring melodies of song. Some rise, formidable and unyielding, through the profound power of silence and the unyielding strength of steel. The clash of worlds, Greece against the Persian tide. The gentle winds across the shimmering Aegean began to shift, carrying with them the faint, unsettling scent of an impending storm. From the distant east, beyond formidable mountains and vast, unforgiving deserts, a colossal empire stirred. An entity of such staggering size and overwhelming power that it dwarfed anything the Greeks had ever known or even conceived of. This was Persia. A realm synonymous with glittering gold and noble horses, a land ruled by mighty kings and their legendary immortals. And now, its imperial gaze turned ominously towards the scattered, fiercely independent city-states of Greece. The vast Persian Empire stretched its dominion from the distant shores of India to the very edge of the Mediterranean Sea. Under the formidable rule of King Darius I, it had relentlessly absorbed countless diverse lands and peoples, meticulously forging an empire of truly dazzling scale and breathtaking complexity. But where Persia sought absolute order and unquestioning submission, Greece, with its inherent spirit, offered a defiant and resolute resistance. The initial spark of conflict ignited in Ionia. The Greek cities nestled along the coast of Asia Minor. Although culturally and ethnically Greek, these cities had fallen under the pervasive control of the Persian Empire. When these Ionian cities, fueled by a desire for autonomy, bravely rebelled in 499 BC, secretly aided and abetted by Athens, they inadvertently ignited a small spark that would rapidly escalate into a roaring inferno of war. Darius, his royal pride deeply insulted and his heart ablaze with vengeful rage, swore to exact retribution. According to ancient legend, he famously instructed a loyal servant to whisper to him each night before he retired to bed, a chilling reminder. "Master, remember the Athenians." In 490 BC, Darius unleashed his invasion force. His formidable fleet traversed the Aegean Sea, making landfall near the verdant plains of Marathon, a mere 26 miles from the heart of Athens. The Athenians, at this critical juncture, stood entirely alone. Sparta, constrained by deeply held religious observances, was tragically unable to dispatch its forces in time. Yet, the Athenians did not falter, their resolve unyielding. Led by the brilliant general Miltiades, the Athenian hoplites, a disciplined force of heavy infantry, charged relentlessly across the plain, catching the unsuspecting Persians entirely off guard. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the unyielding Greek phalanx formation decisively broke the Persian lines, forcing the invaders to flee in disarray back to their ships. Greece, for the very first time, tasted the sweet, exhilarating tang of victory over a colossal empire. A legendary runner, Phidippides, is said to have sprinted tirelessly from Marathon to Athens, bearing the glorious news of the victory before dramatically collapsing from sheer exhaustion. His epic, solitary run gave birth to a legendary race that would echo through countless centuries. But Persia was far from vanquished. 10 years later, Xerxes I, the ambitious son of Darius, meticulously prepared a military force of such immense proportions that, as the historian Herodotus vividly recorded, its sheer thirst was enough to drink rivers dry. His colossal army crossed the Hellespont on ingeniously constructed floating bridges, then descended into Greece like an unstoppable natural storm. In the face of this unprecedented and existential threat, something truly miraculous unfolded. The fragmented city-states, long accustomed to bitter rivalries and fierce independence, astonishingly united. From the intellectual heart of Athens to the militaristic core of Sparta, from the bustling port of Corinth to the sacred oracle at Delphi, they forged a fragile, yet profoundly significant alliance. Themistocles, a cunning and fiercely ambitious Athenian statesman, possessed the foresight to understand that the war would be ultimately won not solely on land, but crucially at sea. He persuasively convinced Athens to embark on a monumental shipbuilding program, creating a formidable fleet of triremes, sleek, incredibly fast warships propelled by 170 oarsmen and devastatingly equipped with bronze rams at their bows. Meanwhile, Sparta, with its unparalleled land forces, took command of the Allied ground troops. The narrow pass at Thermopylae, strategically positioned between a towering mountain range and the sea, was chosen as the site for the initial, defiant stand. Here, King Leonidas of Sparta bravely led his legendary 300 finest warriors, along with a few thousand loyal allies, to block the relentless Persian advance. For 2 grueling days they held their ground with unyielding resolve, their spears and shields forming an impenetrable barrier, defiantly denying passage to a vast empire. However, a treacherous Greek traitor tragically revealed a hidden path through the mountains, allowing the Persians to outflank them. Surrounded and facing certain annihilation, Leonidas, with an act of profound self-sacrifice, dismissed most of his allies, remaining with his core 300 Spartans, fighting valiantly to the very last man. Their ultimate sacrifice became an enduring, immortal legend. A monument still stands at that hallowed site, bearing the poignant words, "Stranger, tell the Spartans that we lie here obedient to their laws." Though Thermopylae eventually fell, it bought crucial time for the Greek forces. The Greek navy, now under the brilliant command of Themistocles, skillfully lured the immense Persian fleet into the narrow, treacherous straits of Salamis. There, the sleek Greek triremes struck with devastating precision. With limited room to maneuver in the confined waters, the larger, more cumbersome Persian ships faltered, becoming easy targets. One by one, they were relentlessly rammed, shattered, and consumed by flames. From the nearby shore, a crestfallen Xerxes watched in utter disbelief as his mighty fleet crumbled before his eyes. He reluctantly returned to Persia, leaving a significant portion of his army behind. The following year, at the decisive Battle of Plataea, the remaining Persian forces were utterly crushed by a united Greek army, brilliantly led by Sparta. And so, against all expectations and defying insurmountable odds, the Greeks had successfully defended their cherished homeland. An empire numbering in the millions had been decisively repelled by free citizens, passionately fighting for their beloved cities, their cherished families, and their fundamental freedom. This monumental victory irrevocably changed Greece forever. No longer merely fragmented clusters of rival cities, the Greeks now perceived themselves as something far greater, a unified, formidable force. The wars had powerfully revealed the latent strength inherent in unity, the immense power of free men standing shoulder to shoulder in defiance. Magnificent temples were erected to commemorate the fallen heroes. Songs and theatrical plays eloquently honored their sacrifices. The gods were devoutly thanked for their divine favor. The Persian threat, once a terrifying reality, had been decisively vanquished. But unity, as was so often the case in the volatile history of Greece, proved fleeting. Athens, whose formidable navy had been absolutely instrumental in securing the victory, emerged from the war with a newfound, exhilarating prestige. It promptly formed the Delian League, an alliance of city-states ostensibly designed to guard against any future Persian incursions. Initially, membership was entirely voluntary, with contributions of ships or money freely given. However, Athens soon began to assert its dominance over the League, gradually treating its allies not as equals, but as mere subjects. The League's treasury was controversially moved from Delos to Athens. Dissenting cities were harshly punished, their fleets confiscated, and their precious autonomy ruthlessly crushed. The League, in all but name, had transformed into an Athenian empire. Athens shamelessly utilized this vast wealth to finance its glorious golden age, its magnificent temples, its vibrant theaters, its burgeoning intellectual pursuits. But beneath this veneer of brilliance, resentment simmered, particularly in powerful cities like Corinth, Thebes, and Sparta. The Persian Wars had undeniably demonstrated the extraordinary capabilities of the Greeks when united, but they had also tragically unveiled the inherent dangers of unchecked ambition. The fire of conflict had not been extinguished, it had merely shifted its direction, and soon, the once unifying flames would turn inward, consuming Greece itself. Yet, for a brief, resplendent moment, Greece had stood as one. Against a veritable sea of Persian arrows, against odds as towering as Mount Olympus itself, the Greeks had triumphed. And under the silent, starlit skies, the sons of humble farmers, skilled potters, and eloquent poets had become immortal legends. The Serpent's Embrace, the Peloponnesian War, and the Seeds of Decline. The unifying fires that had once burned with such brilliant intensity across Greece began, inexorably, to flicker. The immense Persian threat, which had briefly forged a fragile bond between the disparate Greek city-states, had been decisively repelled, and with its disappearance, the ephemeral unity that had held the Greek world together dissolved. With the cessation of war came an burgeoning sense of pride, and with pride, a resurgence of bitter rivalry. Athens, basking in the effulgent glory of its pivotal role in the Persian Wars, grew increasingly ambitious. Its formidable navy reigned supreme over the waves of the Aegean. Its vibrant culture captivated and enchanted the entire known world. And its vast wealth, siphoned from the coffers of the Delian League, poured lavishly into the construction of magnificent marble edifices, the creation of priceless golden artifacts, and the relentless pursuit of intellectual enlightenment. However, the Delian League had ceased to be a genuine partnership. It had, in effect, become a gilded cage, and Athens held the only key. Sparta, inherently proud and austerely disciplined, observed this burgeoning Athenian dominance with escalating unease and suspicion. Its own formidable strength lay firmly on land, in the unwavering discipline of its legendary warriors and the deeply ingrained wisdom of its ancient traditions. Where Athens erected grand monuments to intellectual and artistic achievement, Sparta meticulously trained soldiers for the relentless exigencies of war. Where Athens engaged in spirited, eloquent debates in its public assemblies, Sparta rigidly enforced a stark, unyielding silence. Their fundamental differences, once perhaps complementary in their diversity, now became undeniable causes for profound suspicion and simmering hostility. Tensions mounted steadily, and in the inexorable march of time, war became an unavoidable destiny. In 431 BC, the ominous drums of war sounded across the Greek world. What followed would prove to be one of the longest, most brutal, and utterly devastating conflicts in the entirety of Greek history, the Peloponnesian War. Athens and its sprawling network of allies stood in direct opposition to Sparta and its formidable Peloponnesian League. This internecine conflict would rage for nearly 3 agonizing decades. And in that protracted period, the very fabric of the Greek world would be irrevocably altered, forever changed. The war commenced with a flurry of swift raids and sporadic skirmishes, evolving into protracted sieges and intricate naval maneuvers. Pericles, still the sagacious guiding hand of Athens, urged a strategy of prudent caution. He instructed the entire population to withdraw within the protective confines of the city's formidable walls, relying heavily on the superior Athenian navy to harass and frustrate the enemy from the sea. For a time, this strategy proved effective. But then, a more insidious enemy arrived. Not carried on the tip of a spear, but through the silent, invisible march of sickness. A devastating plague swept through the overcrowded city, claiming the lives of tens of thousands of Athenians. Pericles himself, the very embodiment of Athens' golden age, was among the grim statistics of the dead. The eloquent golden voice of Athens was tragically silenced, and an insidious chaos began to creep into the city's once ordered life. Amidst the pervasive suffering and disarray, a new figure, brilliant, audaciously bold, and undeniably dangerous, ascended to prominence. His name was Alcibiades. He embodied everything the Athenians adored. He was strikingly handsome, remarkably clever, incredibly persuasive, and utterly, captivatingly unpredictable. A former student of the enigmatic Socrates, he was a master of irresistible charm and boundless ambition. He audaciously proposed a daring plan: to dispatch a massive fleet to Sicily, with the audacious goal of conquering Syracuse and thereby dramatically expanding Athens' already formidable empire. The city, weary from years of war yet irresistibly seduced by the allure of even greater glory, agreed to his perilous scheme. But the expedition was doomed to catastrophic failure even before its formidable ships left the Athenian harbor. Alcibiades himself was soon accused of sacrilege and, facing prosecution, swiftly fled. First to Sparta, then on to Persia, shifting his loyalties with the fluid ease of changing cloaks. The Sicilian campaign ended in an unmitigated disaster. The Athenian fleet was utterly annihilated. Thousands upon thousands of Athenian soldiers perished or were condemned to slavery. The city reeled under the profound shock and loss. Sparta, keenly discerning Athens' newfound weakness, mercilessly pressed its advantage. With crucial Persian financial support and a formidable fleet of its own, Sparta slowly but inexorably tightened the noose around its beleaguered rival. Battles raged relentlessly across both land and sea. The protracted war dragged on, mercilessly draining every polis of its precious blood and its accumulated treasure. Cities were razed to the ground. Once steadfast allies betrayed one another with cynical ease. Even the revered gods seemed to fall into a profound, unsettling silence, their divine favor withdrawn. Amidst this widespread ruin and despair, Socrates, now an old man, continued his solitary wanderings through the streets of Athens, persistently asking unsettling questions that no one desired to hear. Why had Athens lost its way? He would ask. What did virtue truly mean in a time of such pervasive war and moral decay? His unwavering refusal to flatter the powerful inevitably earned him formidable enemies. In 399 BC, long after the bitter conclusion of the war, Athens would put him on trial, accusing him of impiety and of corrupting the youth. He was condemned to death. With serene composure, he drank the fatal hemlock, dying with quiet dignity, thereby becoming an immortal martyr for the unyielding pursuit of truth and thought. But that profound sorrow and tragic sacrifice still lay in the unfolding future. The war, however, ground on relentlessly. At Aegospotami, the last vestiges of the Athenian navy were caught utterly unprepared and annihilated, leaving Athens defenseless. With no ships, no provisions, and no lingering hope, Athens was forced to surrender. In 404 BC, Sparta emerged as the ultimate victor. Yet, what had truly been won in this devastating conflict? Sparta imposed harsh and punitive terms, stripping Athens of its once mighty fleet and its sprawling empire, but it found little enduring joy or benefit in its newfound position of dominance. It possessed neither the economic dynamism nor the broad cultural appeal to effectively hold Greece together. The war had not forged a new, cohesive leader for the Greek world. Instead, it had brutally shattered the old order without constructing any viable new one in its place. The Peloponnesian War left the entire Greek world hollowed out, utterly exhausted. The once vibrant city-states, teeming with boundless promise, were now weakened, deeply distrustful of one another, and profoundly vulnerable. Unbridled ambition had inexorably consumed unity. The pursuit of fleeting glory had devoured enduring peace. And from the wild, rugged lands to the north, in the hills of Macedon, a young boy intently watched and listened, his keen mind absorbing the lessons of Greek hubris and division. His name was Alexander. But before his epic story truly commenced, Greece would drift through an extended period of shadows. Still retaining its inherent brilliance, still nurturing its ancient dreams, but profoundly lost in the cacophony and corrosive noise of its own crippling pride. The Macedonian dawn, Philip II and the rise of a new power. While the once mighty city-states of southern Greece lay battered and utterly weary from decades of relentless, self-inflicted warfare, A powerful new force had begun to stir in the wild, often overlooked lands to the north, Macedonia. For generations, the Macedonians had been contemptuously dismissed by the great, self-proclaimed civilized cities of Athens, Sparta, and Thebes. To these sophisticated southerners, the Macedonians were perceived as rough, half-barbarian mountain people. Warriors, certainly, but utterly lacking the refined sensibilities, the exquisite art, and the profound philosophical thought that had become the very proud hallmarks of Greece. But the Macedonians possessed something far more dangerous, something the perpetually fragmented Greek city-states conspicuously lacked: unity, unbridled ambition, and a king unlike any Greece had ever witnessed. His name was Philip II. Philip had spent a crucial period of his youth as a hostage in Thebes, where, with remarkable acuity, he meticulously studied the innovative tactics of the greatest generals in all of Greece. When he eventually returned to Macedon, he did not merely return as a survivor of his ordeal, but as a visionary, a man with a clear and unwavering purpose. He saw with piercing clarity what others, blinded by their own provincialism, did not. While the southern city-states perpetually feuded, traded petty insults, and exhausted themselves in endless, self-destructive rivalries, Macedon possessed the potential to rise to unparalleled power. And so, with single-minded determination, he began his transformation. Philip utterly transformed the Macedonian army. He meticulously created the fearsome Macedonian phalanx, rows upon rows of highly disciplined soldiers armed not with the traditional short spears, but with massive, 18-foot-long sarissas. These extraordinarily long spears allowed them to strike down an enemy even before that enemy could get close enough to engage. Behind this formidable, bristling wall of deadly spikes marched superbly disciplined infantry, highly skilled cavalry units, and ingenious siege engineers, forces unlike anything Greece had ever encountered before. He also shrewdly introduced reforms that bound his soldiers to him personally, fostering an unshakable loyalty among men who often hailed from humble origins, yet who fought fiercely for their king and proudly shared in the spoils of his victories. Philip's ascent was not instantaneous. It was a carefully orchestrated, methodical process. He first repelled internal rivals, ruthlessly crushed rebellious local tribes, and meticulously secured his borders. Then, slowly and with cunning strategic precision, he began to subtly interfere in southern Greek politics, initially offering enticing alliances, only to betray them ruthlessly when it suited his grander ambitions. City by city, battle by hard-won battle, Macedon inexorably extended its influence further and further south. In 338 BC, Philip faced his greatest and most decisive test at the pivotal Battle of Chaeronea. There, on the fertile plains of Boeotia, stood the combined, formidable armies of Athens and Thebes. Once bitter and irreconcilable enemies, they were now ironically allied in a desperate, shared fear of Macedon's rapidly escalating power. The Thebans fielded their most elite and revered warriors, the Sacred Band, a legendary unit of 300 devoted lovers and soldiers, renowned throughout Greece for their unparalleled courage and unwavering loyalty. The Athenians, too, brought their finest troops, determined to resist the Macedonian tide. But Philip was more than ready. By his side fought his son, an 18-year-old prince, already displaying undeniable signs of future greatness, Alexander. The battle was fiercely brutal. The Macedonian phalanx advanced with relentless, unstoppable force, its impossibly long spears driving deep into the Greek lines, causing utter chaos. At a critical juncture, Philip masterfully staged a feigned retreat, cunningly drawing the eager Athenians forward, thereby throwing their disciplined ranks into disarray. Then Alexander, leading the formidable Macedonian cavalry, struck like a sudden, devastating thunderbolt, decisively breaking the Sacred Band and utterly shattering the Greek forces. Thebes and Athens were decisively defeated. Greece, the Greece defined by its fiercely independent city-states, was, in effect, over. Yet Philip, with strategic insight, did not destroy them. He understood their inherent value, their rich cultural legacy. Instead, he shrewdly created the League of Corinth, a federation of Greek states. Unified, at least in name, under his unchallenged leadership. He boldly declared that Greece would no longer wage war against itself. Its gaze would now be directed outward, towards a new, grander target, Persia. Philip harbored a colossal dream, to conquer the very empire that had once so menacingly threatened Greece, to unite the fractious Greek world against a common external enemy once more. And with Macedon's formidable military strength and Greece's unparalleled intellectual brilliance combined, this audacious dream seemed tantalizingly within reach. But fate, as it often does, had other, more tragic plans. In 336 BC, at the absolute zenith of his power and influence, Philip II was brutally assassinated. Struck down at a wedding celebration by one of his own bodyguards. Whether this was an isolated act of personal revenge or part of a deeper, more intricate conspiracy remains an enduring mystery. Lost to the mists of time. His son, Alexander, then a mere 20 years old, inherited the mighty throne. Many observers believed Alexander would be swiftly overthrown, deeming him too young, too audacious, too untested for such a monumental task. They were profoundly mistaken. Alexander, with astonishing ruthlessness and efficiency, crushed every rival who dared to challenge his authority, from rebellious northern tribes to dissenting Greek cities, most notably Thebes, which foolishly dared to rise against him. He unleashed unbridled devastation upon Thebes, leveling the entire city to the ground, sparing only its sacred temples and the house of the revered poet Pindar. The message was chillingly clear. Rebellion would not be tolerated, under any circumstances. By 334 BC, Alexander stood fully ready. The Greek world, weary, battered, but now firmly united under his iron will, would embark on its momentous march eastward. The greatest conquest in the annals of history was about to begin. Alexander the Great. The forge of an empire. The morning light shimmered with an ethereal glow upon the waters of the Hellespont as Alexander, now the undisputed king of Macedon, meticulously prepared to cross into the vast expanse of Asia. At merely 20 years of age, he stood poised to achieve what no Greek before him had ever dared to contemplate. The conquest of the formidable Persian Empire, the largest and most sprawling dominion the world had ever known. Before his first foot touched Persian soil, he paused for a dramatic, symbolic gesture, tossing a spear onto the shore, thereby symbolically claiming Asia as his own by the ancient right of conquest. This was not a reckless, empty boast. It was the audacious commencement of a military campaign that would profoundly reshape the entire ancient world. Alexander's army was relatively small when compared to the vast legions that constituted the Persian military might. However, it was an army meticulously forged in the crucible of unwavering discipline, fierce loyalty, and relentless innovation. Alongside him marched a diverse force of Macedonians and Greeks. Infantry hardened in the impenetrable phalanx formation, elite cavalrymen whose charges were legendary, skilled engineers, and even learned scholars. They carried with them not merely weapons of war, but also the vibrant seeds of language, art, and profound ideas. In 334 BC, the first decisive battle unfolded at the Granicus River. The Persian satraps, arrogant in their overconfidence, had gravely underestimated the formidable young king. Alexander, with his characteristic audacity, personally led the charge, breaking through the enemy lines with a fearless intensity that quickly became his enduring trademark, relentlessly driving the Persians back in disarray. From that victorious point, he swept triumphantly southward through Asia Minor, strategically liberating the numerous Greek cities that had languished under Persian rule. At Gordium, he encountered the legendary Gordian knot, an impossibly intricate tangle of rope tied to an ancient prophecy. He who could untie it would rule all of Asia. Alexander, impatient with convoluted riddles, simply drew his sword and, with a decisive, swift motion, sliced cleanly through it. The message was unmistakable. He would not passively wait for destiny. He would seize it with his own hand. In 333 BC, he faced the formidable King Darius III of Persia for the first time at the Battle of Issus. Though vastly outnumbered by the Persian forces, Alexander's superior tactical acumen and the seamless, coordinated movements of his highly disciplined troops led to a stunning, unexpected victory. Darius, his nerve failing, shamefully fled the battlefield, abandoning even his own family in his panicked retreat. But Alexander, demonstrating an unexpected nobility, did not punish them. He treated Darius's wife and daughters with profound honor and respect, a gesture that earned him both widespread admiration and profound awe across the ancient world. He was not merely a ruthless conqueror, he was rapidly transforming into something more, something transcendent, as he moved inexorably through the Levant and into Egypt. Cities surrendered to him without a single fight. The Egyptians, who had long harbored deep resentment towards Persian rule, welcomed him as a liberator, a true savior. In return, Alexander founded the magnificent city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, a city destined to become a beacon of unparalleled learning and vibrant culture for countless centuries to come. At the oracle of Ammon in the remote Siwa oasis, deep within the desert, the priests, in a moment of profound revelation, declared Alexander to be the son of Zeus. Whether he genuinely believed this divine pronouncement, or simply shrewdly utilized it for political leverage, remains unknown to history. But from that pivotal moment forward, his epic march took on an undeniable, almost sacred, divine tone. Then came the true ultimate test, the very heart of the sprawling Persian Empire. In 331 BC, near the vast plains of Gaugamela, Darius had painstakingly assembled a colossal army, chariots terrifyingly armed with scythes, formidable war elephants, vast formations of cavalry, and infantry numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Yet Alexander remained utterly undaunted, his resolve unshaken. Before the monumental battle, he rode alone under the vast, star-studded sky, contemplating his destiny. He was not merely fighting for land or conquest, but for the elusive prize of immortality itself. At dawn, the two gargantuan forces collided with cataclysmic force. Employing cunning feints and sudden, devastating charges, Alexander masterfully broke the Persian line. He personally led his elite cavalry straight towards the position of Darius, a direct, audacious assault on the heart of the enemy command. Once again, the Persian king, overwhelmed by the relentless pressure, fled in panicked disarray. The mighty empire, with its glittering palaces and immeasurable wealth, had, at its very core, lost its will to fight. Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the resplendent jewel cities of Persia, opened their gates, surrendering to the relentless conqueror. In Persepolis, Alexander entered the magnificent great palace of Xerxes and, in a profoundly symbolic act of vengeance for the Persian burning of Athens a century earlier, deliberately set it ablaze. But fire, for Alexander, could not truly satisfy his insatiable ambition. He was relentlessly chasing something far more elusive and grander than mere victory. He yearned to conquer the entire world. From the heart of Persia, Alexander relentlessly pushed eastward, through the rugged and treacherous lands of Bactria, and deeper into the exotic, unknown territories of India, where majestic rivers flowed wide and impenetrable jungles grew dense and suffocating. At the grueling Battle of the Hydaspes, he faced King Porus, who brought to the battlefield a terrifying, unprecedented weapon, war elephants. These towering, fearsome beasts, utterly alien to the Greeks, presented an immense challenge. It proved to be one of the hardest and most fiercely contested battles of Alexander's entire life. Rain poured incessantly, turning the ground into thick, clinging mud that severely hampered his soldiers' movements. But Alexander, with his characteristic tactical genius, adapted swiftly, dividing his forces and brilliantly outflanking the enemy. When the arduous battle was finally won, he approached Porus, who had fought with immense courage, and inquired how he wished to be treated. "Like a king," came the proud, unwavering reply. Alexander smiled. "You shall have everything a king deserves," he declared, honoring the valor of his defeated foe. His profound respect for courage, even in his enemies, earned him the deep admiration and loyalty of his own men, but paradoxically, also instilled a certain fear. He began to adopt Persian customs, dressed like an Eastern king, and even demanded to be honored with divine reverence. Some of his older, battle-hardened commanders, steeped in the Greek ideals of republican equality, began to harbor growing resentment towards him. In 326 BC, at the edge of the Hyphasis River, his weary army finally, decisively refused to march any farther. They had marched relentlessly for years, crossed formidable mountains, scorching deserts, and raging rivers. They were utterly exhausted, their spirits flagging. Reluctantly, Alexander was forced to turn back. The return journey proved to be even more brutal than the advance. Crossing the vast, unforgiving Gedrosian desert, thousands of his men perished from relentless heat and agonizing thirst. Yet Alexander himself survived, walking alongside his men, sharing their hardships, and famously refusing to drink water unless all could drink with him, a powerful demonstration of leadership through shared suffering. By the time he returned to Babylon, he had created one of the largest and most awe-inspiring empires in the entire course of human history. But it was not merely vast tracts of land that he had conquered. It was also a profound transformation of culture itself. Wherever he went, he left behind numerous Alexandrias, bustling cities where Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian cultures vibrantly mingled and fused. He actively encouraged marriages between his soldiers and local women, fostering a new, hybrid populace. He brought with him scholars and scientists, passionately encouraging the exchange of invaluable knowledge. This groundbreaking fusion of East and West became the defining hallmark of a new historical epoch, the Hellenistic era. But true greatness, like a brilliant flame, often burns with incredible intensity and then swiftly fades. In 323 BC, at the tragically young age of just 32, Alexander fell gravely ill. Perhaps from a fever, poison, or sheer, overwhelming exhaustion, he died in Babylon, reportedly whispering that his immense empire should go to the strongest. There was no designated heir. His generals, fiercely ambitious and known as the Diadochi, ruthlessly divided his vast empire among themselves and immediately turned on each other in a brutal struggle for power. What Alexander had so painstakingly united now began to unravel with alarming speed. But his audacious vision, his profound legacy, undeniably endured. In cities stretching from the fertile lands of Egypt to the distant reaches of India, Greek language and culture continued to thrive with remarkable vigor. Philosophy, art, architecture, and science spread like wildfire across the conquered lands. Alexandria's magnificent great library became an unparalleled center of learning, and Greek rapidly became the lingua franca, the common language, of the entire eastern Mediterranean. Alexander was gone. But the profoundly transformed world he had so boldly imagined had only just begun. The Hellenistic legacy, a blurring of worlds. When Alexander the Great tragically died in Babylon in 323 BC, he bequeathed to the world not merely a vast, sprawling empire, but a transformative idea, that Greek thought, its eloquent language, and its indomitable spirit could extend its profound influence across the entire known world. Although his immense dominion fractured almost immediately into warring factions, his unparalleled cultural legacy took root in ways even he, in his wildest dreams, might never have fully envisioned. The tumultuous decades that followed his death were rife with bitter strife and relentless conflict. His powerful generals, known collectively as the Diadochi, fiercely carved up the empire, each meticulously carving out their own distinct kingdoms from the very corpse of Alexander's magnificent dream. There was Ptolemy, who established a long-lasting dynasty in Egypt. Seleucus claimed vast territories in Mesopotamia and Persia. Antigonus asserted control over Asia Minor. and Cassander solidified his power in Macedonia. They fought with ruthless ambition, forged fleeting alliances, and constantly betrayed one another. Yet, through all the bloodshed and political maneuvering, they ruled not just with the brute force of swords, but with the strategic establishment of new cities, the minting of their own coinage, and the deliberate propagation of their unique blend of Greek-influenced culture. Despite the incessant wars and political instability, the Hellenistic world, a term coined to denote the widespread dissemination of Hellenic Greek culture, flourished with remarkable vitality. In Egypt, the Ptolemaic dynasty meticulously transformed Alexandria into the glittering jewel of the Mediterranean. The city's legendary lighthouse, the Pharos, stood over 300 feet tall. A monumental wonder of the ancient world, its beacon guiding countless ships safely to its bustling ports. But even more radiantly brilliant than the lighthouse was Alexandria's unparalleled library. A true sanctuary for the human mind. Scholars from every corner of the known world converged here, drawn by its immense intellectual gravity. Thousands upon thousands of precious scrolls lined its meticulously organized shelves, containing an unparalleled collection of works in poetry, philosophy, science, and history. The library was far more than a mere place of study. It was a profound symbol of humanity's boundless curiosity and insatiable thirst for knowledge. In its quiet, hallowed halls, the accumulated knowledge of Babylon, Egypt, India, and Greece was painstakingly copied, meticulously catalogued, and reverently preserved for posterity. Here, Greek seamlessly became the universal language of science and diplomacy, transcending former linguistic barriers. Egyptian priests learned to write their ancient texts in Greek. Jewish scriptures were translated into Greek in what became known as the Septuagint, a monumental achievement in cross-cultural communication. The old, rigid borders of language and religion began, subtly but inexorably, to blur. Philosophy, too, underwent a significant evolution in this turbulent age of sprawling empires and pervasive uncertainty. Thinkers increasingly turned inward, seeking solace and guidance within the confines of the self. Epicurus, living and teaching in Athens, famously taught that the highest good and ultimate goal of life was ataraxia, a profound state of tranquility and peace of mind free from disturbance. He posited that gods existed, but that they were distant, indifferent beings, entirely uninterested in the petty affairs of human existence. True happiness, he argued, was to be found in the cultivation of simple pleasures, the warmth of genuine friendship, and freedom from the pervasive grip of fear. In stark contrast, Zeno of Citium founded the influential school of Stoicism. He vigorously preached that virtue was the sole true good, and that one must accept fate with a serene calm and the unwavering application of reason. The Stoics taught that destructive emotions could be mastered through rigorous self-discipline, and that the truly wise man was free, regardless of his external circumstances or perceived misfortunes. These powerful ideas would later profoundly influence Roman emperors, Christian theologians, and countless modern thinkers, demonstrating their enduring appeal across diverse eras and belief systems. Mathematics and science flourished with renewed vigor during this period. In Alexandria, Euclid meticulously systematized geometry, creating a foundational textbook, the Elements, that would be used as the definitive guide for over 2 millennia. Archimedes, working in Syracuse, brilliantly discovered fundamental principles of buoyancy, and ingeniously devised formidable war machines that seemed to defy the very laws of nature itself. Astronomers like Aristarchus of Samos audaciously proposed that the Earth revolved around the Sun, a heliocentric theory that was largely ignored in his own time but was triumphantly vindicated century. Yes, later by Copernicus. Eratosthenes, using simple shadows and clever geometry, calculated the Earth's circumference with astonishing accuracy. The Greeks, in essence, had begun the monumental task of measuring the universe itself. Art, too, underwent a significant transformation. Where classical sculpture had meticulously celebrated ideal beauty and perfect balance, Hellenistic art embraced raw emotion, dynamic movement, and a startling degree of realism. Statues from this period depicted not just idealized forms, but also expressed laughter, profound pain, and even the subtle ravages of age. One could gaze upon a Hellenistic sculpture and perceive not merely flawless perfection, but the profound complexities of human experience. One of the finest examples of this new artistic sensibility was the magnificent winged Victory of Samothrace, a marble goddess depicted striding powerfully forward on the prow of a ship, her robes dramatically whipping in an invisible wind. She did not stand in static repose, she soared with dynamic energy. Another iconic work was the Laocoon group, a visceral depiction of a Trojan priest and his sons tragically entwined in the deadly coils of sea serpents, their faces contorted in agony, their muscles straining in a desperate, futile struggle. This was not serene classical calm, it was raw, visceral, and intensely real emotion. This burgeoning emotional depth also found its way into the vibrant world of theater. Menander, a celebrated playwright in Athens, expertly crafted comedies that meticulously explored the nuances of everyday life. Tales of budding love, hilarious miscommunication, and relatable family squabbles. His works would later profoundly inspire Roman playwrights like Plautus and Terence, and through them, the great writers of the European Renaissance. Even the very structure of cities changed. The Hellenistic rulers meticulously built cities following the traditional Greek architectural mold, complete with agoras, theaters, temples, and gymnasiums. But they filled these new urban centers with a diverse tapestry of people from many different lands. In cities such as Antioch, Pergamon, Rhodes, and Bactra, Greek customs and traditions mingled seamlessly with local practices. Statues of Zeus stood harmoniously beside effigies of Eastern gods. Markets bustled with the sale of olives, luxurious silks, and exotic spices, creating a vibrant melting pot of cultures and goods. Ideas flowed faster than even the swiftest armies. In this newly interconnected world, identity became wonderfully layered and complex. A man might be Persian by birth, speak Greek fluently, worship both Apollo and a local deity, and serve a king who was a direct descendant of one of Alexander's generals. This dynamic fusion created an unparalleled richness, a magnificent tapestry of culture that beautifully blurred old, rigid boundaries. But for all its breathtaking brilliance and intellectual dynamism, the Hellenistic world was inherently fragile. The kingdoms were perpetually embroiled in internecine warfare. Dynasties rose and fell with alarming and often brutal speed. Greed and insatiable ambition constantly corroded alliances, leading to frequent betrayals. Cities were subjected to prolonged brutal sieges. Precious libraries were tragically burned, their invaluable contents lost forever. The flickering light of reason, so painstakingly nurtured, was always at risk, always tenuous. And from the distant west, a powerful new force began its inexorable rise: Rome. The Romans, once eager students and fervent admirers of Greek culture, now began their relentless march eastward, transforming from pupils into conquerors. They deeply admired Greek art, diligently studied Greek philosophy, and learned invaluable lessons from the tactical brilliance of Greek generals. But they brought with them a new, formidable blend of iron discipline, unwavering law, and the relentless drive of an all-consuming empire. In time, they would take the torch of civilization from the hands of Greece and carry it forward. Though perhaps not always with the same inherent grace and intellectual finesse. Still, the profound Hellenistic legacy endured, a vibrant undercurrent shaping the future. Its revolutionary ideas profoundly shaped Rome, and through Rome, subsequently influenced the vast expanses of Europe, the Middle East, and far beyond. The Greek language remained the preeminent tongue of science and sacred scripture. Early Christian texts were meticulously written in Greek. Muslim scholars, later in history, diligently translated Greek philosophy into Arabic, preserving and disseminating this ancient wisdom. The European Renaissance, centuries later, witnessed a passionate rediscovery of Greek learning, fueling a rebirth of art, science, and humanism. And modern democracies, even today, continue to look back to Athens for profound inspiration and foundational principles. The Hellenistic world was a magnificent mosaic, at times fractured and broken, yet undeniably beautiful, and bound together more by the powerful force of ideas than by the mere ties of blood. It was a world of constant movement, of profound wonder, and of relentless intellectual seeking. And though the age of kings and conquerors would eventually fade into the mists of history, the age of the mind had only just begun its enduring journey. The fading light, Greece's eternal influence. All things that experience a glorious rise must, in the relentless march of time, eventually settle into a quieter existence. The blinding brilliance of ancient Greece, once blazing like the midday sun casting its golden light over the Aegean Sea, began, gracefully, to soften into the gentle hues of twilight. The powerful echoes of Alexander's vast conquests still resonated through marble streets and in distant, newly founded cities. But the tenuous unity he had so painstakingly forged had long since fractured into disparate pieces. The Hellenistic kingdoms, powerful in name and ambition but inherently fragile in their internal cohesion, quarreled incessantly, their rivalries simmering or erupting into open conflict. Dynasties rose and fell in spectacular bursts of temporary brilliance and bitter, internecine betrayal. The Seleucids struggled valiantly to maintain their hold over the vast territories of Persia. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt with undeniable splendor, yet also with an encroaching air of decadence. In the magnificent city of Alexandria, queens and kings, though bearing Greek names, played out their roles on a stage where the edges of their vast empire began, subtly but inexorably, to fray. Among these fading rulers, one figure would rise above all others. A woman of extraordinary intellect and charisma, Cleopatra VII, the very last ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt. Intelligent, captivating, and profoundly educated in both ancient Egyptian and Greek traditions, she desperately sought to preserve her dwindling realm through cunning alliances with Rome's most powerful men, first the formidable Julius Caesar, then the magnetic Mark Antony. But the world was undergoing a profound, irreversible transformation. Rome, no longer content merely to admire Greece from afar, now began to actively absorb it. Rome had decisively conquered Macedonia in 168 BC, effectively ending its independent power. And by 146 BC, it had brutally crushed a rebellious Corinth, sending a clear, unequivocal message to the rest of Greece: the era of autonomy was definitively over. The once proud city-states, now mere shadows of their former, glorious selves, were inexorably absorbed into the ever-expanding Roman world. Greece itself became a Roman province, its political independence irrevocably lost, but its rich, invaluable culture was paradoxically treasured and preserved by its new masters. Ironically, even as Greece's political power waned, its cultural influence grew stronger than ever before. The Romans, pragmatic and efficient conquerors, were nonetheless deeply in awe of Greek genius. They meticulously copied its art, adopted its complex pantheon of gods under Latin names, and sent their elite youth to study in the venerable academies of Athens and Rhodes. A Roman general might proudly wear a toga, the symbol of Roman citizenship, but he would effortlessly quote Homer and engage in profound debates using the very words of Plato. Greek became the unofficial second language of the vast Roman Empire. The sophisticated tongue of scholars, of diplomats, and crucially, of early Christian thinkers. The New Testament itself was originally written in Greek. St. Paul, the great apostle, preached his sermons in Greek cities. Philosophy, now subtly tinged with the practical virtues of Stoicism and the burgeoning ideals of Christianity, became the very moral backbone for successive emperors. In Alexandria, the magnificent Great Library continued to draw the curious and the wise from across the known world, though it would eventually fall victim to the ravages of fire and war. Yet, its enduring spirit lived on in the hearts and minds of every scholar who had ever passed through its hallowed halls. Elsewhere, Byzantium, a small Greek colony strategically positioned on the Bosporus, would one day rise to become Constantinople, the glorious capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. And when Rome itself finally succumbed to the barbarian invasions in the West, it was the Greek-speaking Byzantines who steadfastly carried the sacred flame of civilization through the long, encroaching darkness of the Middle Ages. Even in its political decline, Greece remained an inexhaustible wellspring of inspiration. Its iconic architecture inspired magnificent cities from London to Washington, D.C. Its profound plays continued to be performed on stages centuries later, their timeless themes resonating with new audiences. Its brilliant philosophers were quoted by Renaissance artists, Enlightenment thinkers, and modern revolutionaries, their ideas sparking new movements for freedom and justice. Its daring political experiments, though undeniably imperfect and limited in their application, became the foundational blueprint for modern republics and democracies around the globe. The revolutionary concept that citizens could actively shape their own destiny, debated so long ago in the vibrant agora of Athens, remains a living, burning flame in the heart of countless nations today. And yet, beneath all its triumphs and enduring legacies, one fundamental truth persists: Greece was never a singular, monolithic entity. It was a complex collection of diverse voices, sometimes harmoniously blended, sometimes clashing in passionate discord. It encompassed the unwavering bravery of Leonidas, the profound wisdom of Socrates, the boundless ambition of Alexander, the elegant grace of Pericles, the defiant spirit of Antigone, the rigorous logic of Aristotle, and the timeless poetry of Homer. It was forged from stone and fire, guided by reason and sustained by faith, perpetually torn between war and peace. Above all, it was profoundly, beautifully human. Today, the majestic ruins remain. Scattered columns stand in silent testament on sun-drenched hillsides. Marble statues lie half-buried in the dust of millennia, and names are still carved into ancient rock by long-forgotten hands. Tourists walk reverently through the crumbling temples. Scholars pore over fragile papyri, deciphering ancient wisdom. Children, even today, still read the epic tales of Achilles and Odysseus, their imaginations captured by these timeless heroes. The world remembers, because Greece never truly fell. It simply transformed. It first flowed into Rome, then permeated books and schools and songs. It sailed across vast oceans, entered scientific laboratories and grand parliaments, and vibrant theaters. It lived on, not in the ephemeral grandeur of empire, but in the enduring power of its profound influence. And in this remarkable way, it became immortal. So, as the brilliant stars once again shine down upon the very same Aegean waters, the gentle waves continue to whisper its timeless story. A story of a sacred land where the very concept of freedom was born, where human thought dared to question the divine, where men and women reached with boundless courage for greatness and, against all odds, sometimes found it. Ancient Greece rose majestically from the mists of myth and gracefully transitioned into cherished memory. But it never truly disappeared. It simply became eternal.